Hello, this is the first time I'm doing a video tutorial where I will speak over it, so there is no script currently. In this tutorial I want to talk about the dripping technique with watercolors. I prepared a sketch. I prepared it from this photograph from Alice Glass. So before we start, do we want to make it photorealistic like this, or do we want to have a more abstract approach? And I thought for this tutorial I'm going with a more abstract approach because there is a tutorial on how to do the skin color more photorealistically already. I want to explain the choices of color and also the dripping. Before I start, I try to imagine what's the darkest parts and what's the lightest parts. The darker parts is going to be the hair, and I think the lightest part, as you can see, is probably like the face. So I start with coloring the face. Let's begin by wetting the area. Since it's more abstract, we don't really have to pay attention to wetting all of the area, or at least to be very careful, because we can like just sprinkle some water. And what I'm doing right now is I'm constantly checking, okay, here is a darker area and it's going down here. The color I chose for this is basically just like the rest that's on my watercolor palette. You could also start with the blue, or we can just add a blue tone. We just have to stick to the values. So when we see a darker point here, we have to use a darker color. Doesn't really matter what color it is. Of course it should at least match a bit, but I think the best thing you go is with your feeling. So I'm not really having a plan like, okay, this is going to be, I don't know, yellow because this matches perfectly with some green or something, or I use some bluish gray because it matches with something. I just really like to stick to the values. I mean, I like, for example, the combination of blue, magenta and some green parts, or just basically blue and magenta is very nice for a color scheme. But you're very free. Since it's not going to be photorealistic, we are free and we can experiment. I think that's probably like the best thing anyway, to just experiment and try to figure out what looks good. So again, like right now the face is fully wet, so we have some nice gradients because the color flows on the water on the surface of the paper. But again, we don't really have to rely on that. We can also work with the edges that's typical for watercolor. So I'm adding some violet here because here is a shadow, and again, like, it's totally optional what color you choose, at least the value has to be right. That's why I'm also waiting with details like lips and stuff, because for that I want to have a sharp edge and therefore it needs to be dry right here. So I'm doing like the rough shadow light situation with my wet paper right now to at least have some kind of skeleton that we can work on with some more shapes. And as you can see, like, I'm really not sticking to the colors, so I think I'll add again some blue for the eye shadows. Not the literal eyeliner, but for the skin tones. And maybe I'll do some rose at the nose. The thing you want to make sure when you work with watercolors is that your sketch is done right. So you can't really correct something once you lay down the colors. At least, yeah, make sure when you start that your sketch is to your full satisfaction. For my university, I had to start watercolors without any sketches. I mean, I admit this is done very roughly on purpose, but again, like, if you have no sketch, it's most likely to happen that that will be visible in your final painting. So really make sure that you're satisfied with your sketch and that everything is correct anatomically. So now the paper has dried a bit down and I can start with the lips, and as you can see, the watercolor won't run somewhere else, and I can create a nice sharp edge. So when to tell like the paper is dry enough to do this step, this is really something that comes with experience. Do watercolor more often and you will most likely learn very quickly when you can work on other things. And also you can use your time to let it dry down to, I don't know, start with different things like the hair. But since I want to do it like structured, I just try to at least get the face done in a way that you can recognize it. And yeah, again, like the color choices is really more depending on the values, not really on if the colors match. Because actually I think that makes it interesting if some colors don't really match, like that's something studying art has got me through. Not everything has to be correct. I really like it when it's accurate and when everything is like matching together. But again, like it's not the last time you paint, so you can also experiment. And as you can see, I'm working with very light washes because I will add more depth with every layer of watercolor I put on there. That's something you really have to keep in mind. I mean, like you probably know that with watercolor it's hard to go back to a more lighter shade without adding some white or trying to rub the watercolor off the paper. So be very careful. I mean, you have enough time to add more layers of watercolor. You don't really have to go all in the first wash. I'm overpainting a bit here, but I know that this part right here is going to be darker than the skin, so I can just add some deeper shadows there, and this way you can cover it. And even though you've overpainted it, if there's a darker color covering it, no one will see that. And even if it at some points merges in with the not already dried areas, like here the orange bleeds into the skin, that's not bad. We are not trying to get the actual photorealistic look here, so that's like something that we can include or we can try to fix that. And as you can see, if I would try to get a photorealistic look, I would have to wet the whole face area again and try to blend the colors, but right now I'm just working it and placing the colors roughly and not really caring if there are any stain-like residues. I mean, that's like the look that watercolor does and that we are going here for. And while I'm working, I'm constantly checking the photograph. I know for sure that I'm placing the colors or the values at the right place. And even with more photorealistic paintings or with paintings you do out of your head, it's always good to have at least some reference to stick to, so you don't mess up like the whole light situation and put some shadows where there shouldn't be some. Like I would not color any darker around under the eyes. The cheeks should stay light, at least lighter than the rest. And as you can see, I'm not touching like the dark parts because I'm waiting for the paper to dry in the first place, and also I'm working from light to dark. Since this is black, it's going to be one of the last steps. Otherwise it would probably all bleed together, so you couldn't see the details. So I'm just waiting and moving my way to the darker parts. And when something like this happens, you can just push the colors away a bit. Since the hair is not really touching the skin, or more like covering, since the hair is on top of the skin, I can also start with that right now. Even though it's a bit darker than the rest, or like it's also black, I would probably do it with a photorealistic painting after I'm fully done with the skin. Yeah, since we are doing it more roughly, we can also just start right now painting the hair What's about the dripping technique, that's going to come when we have rendered the face. Or we could already do it, but if we paint another wash of paint on it, it would smudge, and we want to have the drips straight and identifiable shape. Just let's try it out. So if I would place some yeah, let's take some blue color here, and if I would like turn it down a bit, and it would drop. Yeah, okay, the paper is not really dry, but here at this point you can see it, like, yeah. Right now this thing I like it already, so I wouldn't like, I'm not sure, like if I would now go there and do another wash on it, you can see like it disappears. So the dripping comes at near the end. As I'm checking like right here, I don't want it to be that dark, so I'm pushing away some color. It doesn't have to be that perfect, and even if you are not satisfied with the results, you can start over again. Like the paper I'm working on is quite cheap as well, so I mean I wouldn't recommend doing some experiments on expensive paper. That probably wouldn't be the best thing to do, but trying these more abstract paintings, you can go on cheaper paper and you can just try. And always keep a bit of tissue, or in my case I use toilet paper, in your hand. So when you wipe away some colors, you can just put them back and clean your brush. Alright. Since there's the orange pullover, I want to add some more yellowish tone here, just to make it a bit more like a reflection and not let the face appear stick on. And I can tell like the magic really happens when we start drawing the eyes more detailed on top of the dried colors. And it's already, you can identify the lips since they are a bit darker. I'll use some more violet tone. And with watercolors you have to keep in mind, even if it on the first view doesn't look accurate or realistic or something like that, I figured when I'm not really satisfied with paintings and I show them to some people, they always tell me, oh no, that's totally like great. I can imagine what's going on there, so you don't have to work on it that full. And also like that's the charm of watercolors, to have it more blotchy. The great things working more abstract. And basically it's just working layer by layer, so waiting for parts to dry completely or to at least dry a bit. I mean, again, like in that time we can work on different things. That's the whole magic, even with photorealistic painting. The thing is a constant waiting for it to dry and adding another layer. Just not giving a lot of damps when working more abstract. Just thinking, well, that's alright. So I'm now mixing a more deeper shadow tone for the orange pullover, trying a bit to match that tone. So and now we're going to start the eyes. The thing is, the paper isn't fully dried down, which gives us not the most sharp edges, but depending on what you want, that can also be something that emerges better with the whole rest. Since everything is a bit blurry, the eyes would look sticked on if we had that really sharp edges. So we try to work a bit more like the rest, and ignoring that fact for a moment that this will blur out a bit. At some points it's even like beneficial, since this is actually a screenshot from Alice Glass Instagram, I guess. and therefore it's also a bit blurry, and we can try to get that look as well for the image that we are working on. When you do watercolors more often, you will also get a bit of like a feeling on what things are great to be done with a brush and what details you can add afterwards with pencils. And some of these details would probably be like the slight shimmer here on the black eye that really can be achieved with a white pencil. Just a few strokes on the black area, and then you have like the shimmering highlights. Alright, so now that we are at least here around this area at a certain point, we can use the dripping technique, because I don't want to go full over right here, just painting it out. I just want to let it like dissolve with the white background. So I'm going in with a more yellowish and orange tone. Now just let it run down. You can actually experiment and try anything you want to do. Visible brush strokes are also some idea, like getting some more of that paper texture visible. You could also blot some points here and there just to make it all dissolve with the paper. The thing is that you have to keep your composition in mind. So since we have a very good diagonal line here, I would try to repeat that right here. So going cross there wouldn't be that beneficial for the whole thing to look like done on purpose. So you really want to give it a more diagonal composition line, and therefore I'm doing brush strokes in that direction. I really like how burning this orange is compared to the more pale phase. When I started this painting, it really could have gone anywhere, and I think that's the thing. You can like make your thoughts about it, what you want and what color palette works, but again, this is not my final painting, the last one I would ever do, so I could also like go and change it up with the next portrait I'm working on. It's really up to you. But again, I like to experiment and try that out if that would look good, and it's in the eye of the beholder. Maybe the orange is for some viewers too burning, too screaming, or not very supple enough, but since I'm not really familiar with that, like I haven't done a painting like this before, and I haven't done that orange in that extent before, so I'm learning. And maybe I can use it even better in the next painting. I will probably stop right here, work on more details, and show you the final picture at the end of the video. I hope you find it helpful, even though it's not finished right now, but I hope you get what my thoughts are on this painting. Thank you very much for supporting me on Patreon, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.